right, so tell me a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So I, my name is Sandahl Taylor. For those of you guys who don't know, my name actually comes from a movie. It is Conan the Barbarian, the very first one with Arnold Schwarzenegger. The actress who plays in that movie, her name is Sandahl Bergman. So I normally get that question, well, where does my name come from? And my mom loved the movie so much, loved that actress so much that she gave me her name. Fun fact about that is I actually got to meet her a few years back at a Comic-Con and really kind of got to get more information about where my name comes from. And it comes from a Swedish name, Norwegian descent, and it really has no meaning. So I learned that a couple years ago. I am a Army veteran spouse, so my husband is former military from the Army, currently retired, quote unquote. Well, we'll just call it that. I have two beautiful children. I have an 8-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son. And I'm currently representing my heritage as Mrs. Germany World 2020 in the Mrs. World organization, which is the largest pageant for married women across the world. So that is just a little bit about me. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did you get into pageantry?
So growing up, my dad was a hobby photographer, actually, and I loved modeling from a very, very young age. And I really started to pursue it in my teens. And I was doing all kinds of different things, modeling competitions, runway competitions, bikini competitions. And I just kind of fell in love with the bettering of yourself aspect of it and meeting new people. Fast forward a few years, a pageant director actually had heard about me from a public speaking event that I did about heart health awareness and heard about the things that I was doing in the community with my free haircut program and suggested that I look into pageantry as another platform. So I started doing pageantry in 2015, was my very first ever bigger pageant, so to speak. I did, like I said, those little competitions, but nothing ever in the sense of a larger pageant arena. And my very first pageant competition, I was able to successfully place first runner-up in, and I won the interview award. And that's one of my most precious interview awards because I was named top interview out of the entire pageant staff that competed that day from every age division. So that award is very special to me, as of course it was also one of my first ever awards given that I've ever won in my entire life. So it really kind of brought me to this whole new meaning of what pageantry could do for my life and my purpose and what it really meant to be a pageant queen.
Okay, now you mentioned heart health awareness. So if you don't mind, can we get into that a little bit? What got you interested in heart health awareness?
Absolutely. So if you wouldn't mind going on a little journey with me, if that's okay,
Yep.
I'm going to ask for you to close your eyes and imagine that you're 17 years old again. And you're at your job and your mom comes into your job saying, you have to leave right now. Your dad just had a heart attack. That's exactly what happened to me when I was 17. My father had a heart attack and stroke in 2005 that left him completely paralyzed on his left-hand side still to this day. Shortly after that, I lost one of my dearest friends to heart disease who was younger than 30. And it just kept growing from there. As soon as that happened to my dad, I had a friend who had a friend. I had a friend whose dad. I had a friend whose sister. I had a brother. I had, all these people that were affected by this disease. And once I started really looking into it and realizing that it was the number one cause of death in the entire world, let alone America and Germany, and that it affects women more than men. Of course, 1 out of 3 women are affected by this disease. And even more so, it affects people of color, African American women and Latina women. My brain literally exploded in a sense because I did not know that it was the number one killer in America, nor did I know how serious it really was, and the simple things that we could be doing every single day to change this and to educate people on it. And so when that happened to my dad, I realized that my life's mission kind of changed. And at that time, I didn't realize how much it was going to change or how my story could affect others. But then when I was 29, I was at work and I myself actually thought I had a heart attack. And I found out that I did not. I found out that I have something that is still not technically diagnosed called MVP, which does not stand for most valuable player. As much as I would like to have it stand for that, it doesn't. It actually stands for mitral valve prolapse, which in an essence stands for a leaky valve. So my valve doesn't shut properly. It kind of floats in the air. And what happens is sometimes blood that's not supposed to be there is there. And it can cause your heart rate to go very, very fast at any given point in time. And I actually thought I was having a heart attack when the first time this ever happened, because my heart rate got so high, my chest was tight, I couldn't breathe, I couldn't speak, and I was standing at work. And I was so blessed and lucky to find out that that did not happen, but that, again, I found something new that I didn't know about. And so I've been speaking about it for 10 years now, over 10 years now, almost 19, actually almost close to 20, just over 15 years, but really kind of becoming an advocate for this with pageantry and talking about those things that we can do to become more heart health aware. And again, things that we can do over the internet or on the phone with you, learning about at least one trick or tip that can help you in your everyday life. And so that's kind of where that started, but it's just blossomed to so much more. It's allowed me to network with so many more people. It's allowed me to connect with phenomenal women across the world. It's led me to being on podcasts like I am today. So I can't be more grateful and more blessed and more honored to be able to sit there and talk about such a personal experience, but to possibly maybe change one life. And that's really what it's about.
So did you, as far as the stuff that you're finding, because you mentioned like there's some little tips, but what did you find, or was it various things that was, like the leading cause of these heart health issues?
So there are some major causes. The first big two, I always say my top two are diet and exercise. And we could have a whole podcast segment about that, but I'm going to kind of put it very bluntly. There is inadequate food supply across the world, especially to low-income individuals that don't have access to it. But there are certain things that we can do daily to help that and to combat that inadequate nutrition. One of those things is education. And the second thing is, again, I call it the seedling, not necessarily physical seeds, but also mental seeds. So giving seeds that you might have from a pepper to a family that doesn't have them, giving seeds from that pumpkin that you don't have, that you're going to get rid of, to a family that they can plant, and also planting the seed of education. I know that education is not equal in every state, in every town, and in every country, but utilizing the platforms that we do have to make that connection. Maybe I do know someone like yourself, Rodney, who has a platform that is in a community that I've never been in, and you say to me, Sandahl, hey, teach me one thing that I can teach my community. Right. That right there is changing that, planting that seed. And so now that maybe we can have that more people and that more ripple effect. So diet and exercise. Exercise in adults, we need 3 days a week at 60 minutes a day. And that's so hard because we live in such a society where we're constantly on a go. But my goal is to give you stuff that you already do in your daily lives that you could just add to make it easier. And for children, it's 60 minutes a day. And so one of the things I love that are out there is that there are programs like the Boys and Girls Club, the YMCA, that are partnering up with huge platforms like the NFL draft 60 60 minutes a day playtime. And these things that you can even do at your local community, or again, like VFWs, you can host jumpathons, you can host basketball, hoops for heart. You can host so many different programs and platforms to get these kids out there to teach them activities. And same thing with adults. I tell people it sounds silly, but when you go to the bathroom, do 5 squats.
Right.
If you can't do a squat, do 5 calf raises. If you can't do calf raises, walk in place for 5 seconds before you go to the bathroom. When you're washing your hands, dance a little bit. When you're putting your kids to bed, if they're light enough for you to pick them up, maybe you pick them up a couple times extra. There are so many things that in every sense that we can do. Even smiling increases your heart health awareness. So I try to find something with every capacity, whether that's someone who may be physically disabled, mentally disabled, again, having that inadequacy to obtain, the proper workout gear. I talk to them about using cans in their household. Again, using your own body weight. Going outside even for a walk, or just getting outside in general are things that we can do in our everyday life. So that's kind of my goal, is to customize my approach to any person that I'm talking to, regardless of where they come from or what they look like or what they have access to. And again, planting that seed for change.
Do you feel like, because, when you talk about diet, our diets, especially in the poorer communities, are handed down from generation to generation. Do you find convincing people that, this is going to benefit them? Do you find like there's some kind of pushback and things like that, or you find people receptive?
So what I find is that when you partner with that person and talking to them about, again, those simple tips and tricks. So we'll bring up a wide food that I personally love, pizza. Okay. I love pizza. Yep. Okay. Now, I don't really know anybody who doesn't like pizza, but I'm sure that there are some out there listening. So let's just say your favorite food is pizza, and you've been passed down and passed down. Well, there are some simple things to do. Maybe you're going to start off with making your own tomato sauce, getting some tomatoes, crushing them up, start there. Or again, maybe you're going to go out and you're going to get a better quality of a cheese, a smaller amount, because maybe you can't afford it, a bigger quality, and you're going to grate it up yourself. Or maybe you're going to start with the bread, which is most people's, biggest concern. And maybe you're going to make it a cauliflower bread, right, or some other source. So I try to say, let's start with one item, and I try to pick their favorite item to eat, unless it's already a good item. So if it's a good, healthy item, we don't need to change that. I always say, tell me your guilty pleasure. Pizza and carbs is mine. So I love me some carbs. So, right, you have to start with one item. And if you're doing that, you're making the change. Then you have to look and say, why do I want to do this? I get it. Not everybody wants to change their lifestyle and their health style. And that's okay. You'll be ready. You might be ready. You might not be ready now, but you may be ready at some point. So if right now you don't want to change what you want to eat, maybe we can look at what you drink. Maybe we can add in 1 extra glass of water.
Right.
Or again, maybe we can start with how you're cooking your food. Instead of frying it in oil, maybe we can reach out and I can get you an air fryer, or I can teach you how to change the way that you're, like, what oil you're cooking in, so that it's a little bit less hard on your arteries. Right. Again, it just depends on each individual on what their goals are and how much they want to get better. I try, again, just to have them say, okay, I'm willing to change one item, and then we kind of go from there.
Yeah, I think too also when it was important to me, the language you're using. And when you say partnering, I think that's, that makes it a little bit easier for people because they feel like they're in it with you. So where did the idea of or the language, or where did that idea of, partnering as opposed to let me show you something?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. When you partner with somebody, you are communicating with them on a level that it's saying, I hear you and I'm listening and I value what you have to say, as opposed to, this is how you should do it. Let me show you is good too, but are you willing to work with me? Are you willing to come together? Are we willing to take this? And of course, you also want to make sure that you're not telling somebody that what they did or what their parents did was wrong, because I don't believe in that.
Right.
They what we simply know is that we now know different, because better also isn't the right word. We now know different. We now know that eating these certain foods can lower my risk of heart disease.
Right.
We now know that eating these certain bad foods is going to lower my life expectancy age. What do I want more? And it's okay to have that favorite food. So again, I'm going to go to that pizza. I can eat my pizza just the way I want it, but I'm not going to eat that every day.
Right.
Maybe I'm going to make that my monthly treat or my weekly treat, whatever it is you need to do to start. I still have my treats. Like I said, pizza is definitely a guilty pleasure of mine. Um, and so I still got to eat my pizza and I still got to be happy about it.
Right.
But you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, I don't I eat a ketogenic diet, so I don't really do too much carbs. But there are I like cake and stuff like that. If I'm gonna cheat, I'm gonna have me a big cake or a cupcake or something like that, something really sweet. But in general, I stay away from carbs. So the cauliflower pizza is, because I love pizza too. So the cauliflower pizza is something that I go to, or like I'll use like a ground chicken and make the crust out of the ground chicken.
Oh, that's a good idea. You're gonna have to share that with me.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know why I never thought of that. And I eat ground chicken all the time. So you're definitely gonna have to send that to me, because again, you just gave me a great idea for a collaboration. So if pasta is your thing or you like sweets, I got a lot of good sweet
Okay.
treats.
Okay. For
treats.
sure. For sure.
Uh, but
We'll swap that.
keep that sweet, because sweets and eating that good food, it registers the endorphins in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always like to quote Legally Blonde. Endorphins make you happy, and happy people don't do bad things. We're going to keep it that message. And so when your endorphins are happy, you make a lifelong memory.
Right.
And the same effect happens if you're sad. So when you eat, or anything that you do when you're upset or sad or depressed, you also make a memory. But we want the happy memories. We want you to be like, oh my God, this food made me feel so good. We want this exercise made me feel so good. And that's what we have to find. And I feel good, so I look good. And I look good because I feel good. And I have more energy because I'm eating right. And, I'm happier. And, all these things come from what we eat and what we do on a daily basis.
Right. So you mentioned free haircuts to veterans. How did you get involved with that?
So earlier I was talking about my dad. What I did not mention is that my dad is a Vietnam vet, Navy. He was a Navy Vietnam veteran. And my whole life, I've loved actually giving back to the community in some sort. But 10 years ago, like I said, that really kind of changed. And I say 10 because even though it's a little bit more than that, it took me some time to really kind of put it into power. I went through a period in my life where I was homeless and I survived domestic violence and I was caring for an infant child and I had nowhere to go. And so I utilized some programs that were in my area to get me back on my feet. And one of those programs was the Dress for Success program that helps you get clothing to get an interview. And I started working with that program, and they were partnered with the Veterans Leadership Program, which is a partner with a local Pittsburgh area. That's where I'm from, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that helps veterans. And so ever since then, and a good friend of mine who I was in contact with kind of connected me with the Veterans Leadership Program, and I saw all the things that they were doing. They host an annual event called the Stand Up for Vets. And I started cutting hair there because I was a licensed hairdresser at the time, and I still am. I'm actually a teacher now, cosmetology instructor. And so I started cutting hair at this event. But at that event, I said, well, why only this event? Why can't I do more? So I started doing more. I started doing haircuts for veterans, homeless shelters, women's shelters, men's shelters, children's shelters. I've gone to Children's Hospital and done haircuts for cancer survivors, heart health survivors, people that are going through transgender processing, and if they're in the hospital and they can't get out. I've gone to charity events and homes, so raising money for children's and different things, doing free haircuts. And I really just enjoyed doing it. People don't realize how much a haircut can change somebody's life. But if you actually research the statistics on it, 85% of employers say that they judge a person based off of their looks within the first 20 seconds of meeting them.
Right.
Their top category for that judgment is personal hygiene, including how they look. So how do they present themselves? When you ask those same people what do they look at, they say their hair and typically how they're dressed. So to me, I thought, well, if this haircut can get this veteran a job because they just got back from a deployment and they're already struggling, or maybe they went through a road of depression and substance abuse and they haven't had a job, or maybe they just couldn't afford to get a haircut. Or again, these people who are already suffering have this one thing that they can't afford, and it could change their day or their life. And I knew I could do that at pretty much no cost to me. All it cost me is my time because I have my tools, I have my equipment. Typically, I use electricity that's in my environment already, or I bring a generator. It's really not a lot of my cost. There's really not a lot of overhead. Why not? It was one thing that I could do. And that's kind of where that all started. And so over the past 2 years, I've been trying to fund my own nonprofit called the Haircut Foundation. I've been already working on the business side of it, and I have all the paperwork done, but just trying to fund it and get the funding to actually start it, it has been a little bit of a challenge for me, but that's not going to continue the work that I'm going to do. And the reason why I want an actual nonprofit is so that I can travel the world and do this all across the world and help more people.
Right.
And I shoot for the moon, so you're going to have to dream with me a little bit here. Eventually, I would love to see chapters across every state in America and a chapter in, different countries of the world where, I could work with organizations that are willing to partner with me on this. And again, maybe change lives. So that's kind of where that all started from. It's just seeing how one thing can change somebody's entire life and wanting and trying to continue to be a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with dreaming. So now you mentioned that you were homeless with a baby. How do you transition from, being homeless and being able to, because I've been homeless twice. How did you transition from being homeless with an infant to your mindset to, get out of that and also take on all of these things?
It was really tough. And sometimes I have to catch myself. So excuse me if I start tearing up a little bit, because when I left my childhood home, my home actually got repossessed for me and my brother whenever my dad had that heart attack and stroke. So I was homeless then, and I chose to live with my mother, who at the time we were building our relationship. We had some distance before that. And my mom lived about an hour away from me, which doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're 17 and you just graduated high school and you're not in college, you don't really know anybody. So I knew no one, not a single soul. And I fell into the wrong crowd, met a guy who I thought I loved or I thought loved me, realized that that wasn't the case. He started doing drugs. He was a drug addict. He was addicted to opioids and heroin. And I realized it was unfortunately, I always call it the perfect time, but it's also a bad time. We had a child together. I was sitting there on the dining room stairs. I'm sorry, not on the stairs, on my dining room couch next to a really good friend of mine. He ran down. He physically assaulted me. He choked me, poured beer in my eyes, then physically picked me up and pushed me into a wall so hard that some of my plaster fell down. And I didn't even know what happened to my child at the time because I was holding my child. And I chose to leave that same day, and I had nowhere to go. I didn't want to go back to my mother's house at the time, even though I was invited, because she only lived 4 streets away from my abuser at the time. I didn't want to put her life or my stepfather's life in jeopardy, or their property or their dogs in jeopardy, because I didn't know what this man was capable with. Unfortunately, the drugs, I feel like, were amplifying things. This man slashed the tires to my car when this incident happened. He also slashed the hood to my convertible, because I had a convertible at the time. It was my fun car, you know. It was a cloth top convertible that I had to fix that same night before I could leave. And he or someone he knew did this. It's never been proven that he did it, but about 85% sure he did it. And since then, it was a lot about changing my mindset. First, I had to learn how to love myself again, because for the longest time, you don't think that you're worth anything. And then you think that maybe you deserved it.
Right.
And then you start thinking, well, what did I do wrong? Was I not good enough? Was I not pretty enough? Was I not thin enough? Did I not love them enough? And then you realize that it really had nothing to do with you. It had to do all with them.
Right.
And you have to learn how to love yourself. And so I had to do that first. And then while I was loving myself, I'm also trying to raise a child, which I was very young. I was 19. I don't even think I still know what I'm doing, and my child's 12 years old. I don't know if we ever do know what we're doing.
No.
But you're trying to do your best. You're trying to keep them safe. At the same time, I was moving from home to home. I was living with friends and family who I'm so grateful for, and I'm still friends with today. And they kept me safe, and they kept my child safe. And then I had to learn, okay, I have to feel what I need to feel, and then I have to move forward, because this child needs me. My son's father was not in my son's life until he was 9 years old, but I got blessed from God. And I say that because God put a man in my life who loved me at the time more than I loved myself. So I met my husband in 2010, and my son was only about 2-3 years old at the time. And I always call him my knight in camo armor, because he saved me from myself. And I say camo because, you know, he's in the military. So he was in the military. He showed me what love was supposed to be like. He told me that I should have never been feeling these types of things. He said the truth about what I was supposed to be feeling, and that it was okay to be feeling these ways. He showed me that I deserved more out of my life. And my friend said this too, but to hear it from a man that I didn't know, really, we were still learning to be with each other at this point. And to see that he valued my life, and he valued my opinion, and he valued my son's life, even though my son was not his son. My son is not the same color of him either. My son is Caucasian, and my husband is Black. Mm-hmm. And he still loved us anyways, was really what made the difference of me starting it. Then, like I said, finding those programs that were out there and finding the resources and just talking to people to get even more resources to get myself on my feet. I started living in low income housing. Then I got a job through that Dress for Success organization. I was actually working at a bank, and I started to really get my life on track. I started to learn about credit. I started to learn about, I call it big life 101, re-life 101, because I started to learn about things I never learned about in school. And I never really realized were so important. And, I started being taught all these things from just networking and talking to people and asking questions. And then, like I said, I knew that I could give back now. I was at this place where, okay, I got my stuff a little bit together. I wasn't all the way together yet, but I could still do something. And that's kind of where I started giving out the free haircuts. And then when I really found my voice, because it takes a while to find your voice and to get that message out there. And yes, you just, heard me kind of break down for a minute. And that still happens today. But to find the strength that your story can bring to somebody, it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of help. I have a lot of help. I have an amazing support system. I have amazing friends and amazing family. And I'm not alone. And that's what we have to remind each other, that we are not alone and that we can help each other. There is something that everyone can do to help someone else.
Absolutely. And I'm sure it took you a little bit of time to trust, your current husband after your experience. What do you think? What was it about him initially that, the wall started to come down a little bit, because you're just coming out of a situation, and as a mother, you're going to be guarded, with your baby, you're going to be extra guarded, and then, you obviously have to, when you have somebody that you love, or like you say, you thought you loved, hurt you in that way, it's hard to trust. Like, what was it about your husband that made you, start to trust again?
There were a couple things. I don't know if I could narrow it down to just one. So first things first is I am 5'8", and I'm pretty tall for a woman. And when I have my shoes on, like heels, because us girls, we like heels, I'm about 6'1".
Okay.
Because I gotta wear tall shoes. I don't know.
I'm still taller than you, but go ahead.
But there's something nice about putting on a nice pair of heels. Okay. So first things first is my husband wasn't intimidated of that fact. When I first met him, some men are intimidated by your height or just how you carry yourself. And like you mentioned, I was very kind of cold. I like to use the word cold, or kind of had my guard up. And so he wasn't intimidated of that. A. B, you're absolutely right. Because I was guarded, I tried to, push him away, as other people probably prior to him. And I'm just realizing it, after he broke down my walls. I'm like, wow, I was so cold.
Mm.
I didn't even realize I was doing some of the things I was doing because I wouldn't believe people when they would say something, or, I wouldn't trust that they were going to be where they said they were going to be. So he really pushed those walls down. And like I said, I feel blessed and I feel very lucky, because he could have left and he could have said, I'm not dealing with this. I don't have the time for this. But he broke down those walls. And the day that I knew he was someone I was going to spend the rest of my life with was the day that my son, who was around the age of 4 at the time, came up to me and had a conversation with me about asking if he could to start calling my boyfriend like almost like stepdad, or hey dad.
Right.
Have that conversation, because as I mentioned, he didn't really, I don't want to say he didn't have a dad, but his dad was not involved. So we had the conversation as well as we could, with explaining to him that he does have a dad. His dad is, was dealing with some personal things. We never had the discussion about what was actually going on until very recently. and I only had to have that conversation because someone else had it with him without my permission. And that was the day it really hit me. I was like, well, my son loves him. I love him. And he stayed with me through all of this when he could have left. And that was really, I feel like, the day that, I mean, I was already falling in love, but that was the day that I kind of jumped over the hurdle back into the ocean, so to speak. But there was multiple things before that, again, he was kind of chipping away at that tree, that cherry tree, and just kind of inch by inch, he was breaking those walls down. And God bless him, because he loved me, because like I said, I thank him every day, because I didn't know I was being that way. And it took him and several friends of mine, who I'm graciously thanking through your podcast right now, because if it wasn't for them, I probably would have let a good man like walk right past me. So thank you to my friends and family who helped me realize that I was being a little cold and unopen to love, because without you, I wouldn't have such an amazing man in my life.
Right. I don't want to let me get you back onto something that is probably brighten you up a little bit more. With pageantry, from what I saw, because the only thing I know about pageantry is what I see on TV. It allows you to kind of like get into other things, and allows you to, to really reach across the board and dive into some things that you're passionate about. What other things are you passionate about, and what other things you feel like pageantry has allowed you or opened the doors for you?
So again, I think that the first thing is finding my voice. Pageantry allowed me to learn even more about myself than I was already learning. It allowed me to become the best version of myself, and how to authentically tell my story, who I am, what did I want, and why pageantry. Why did I choose pageantry? Pageantry is like a big, giant, shiny microphone. I was doing these things as Sandahl. I was out in my community talking about these things. I was out in my community giving these very haircuts. But when I put on my first ever local sash and crown, I saw what I call the power of the crown and sash. People wanted to hear me more. People wanted to know what what I had to say. People actually listened to what I had to say. And I realized that I now had a platform to get my message out there much more than I could ever do myself. So that was really the first reason of pageantry. But I'm passionate about life in general. My kids, I love my kids, even though, with the lockdown, sometimes, they drive us crazy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I am passionate about working out. I love health and fitness now, even though I didn't, we don't always love it, but I'm learning to find my passion in that. I love giving back to my community. I am passionate about changing the narrative about what a pageant queen is supposed to look like, what we are supposed to sound like, and what people stereotype as what pageantry is. Now, I will say, if you have not shown my photo yet, yes, I am blonde, and yes, I am tall. I am not thin, however. So I am a little heavier than what people would think an ideal pageant woman might be, or the stereotype pageant woman.
Right.
And as I mentioned to you before, I came from a low to middle class family, and I'm still not rich by any means at all. And on top of that, I'm in an interracial marriage. So none of those things are what you would stereotypically think are pageant queens.
Right.
People also don't think pageant queens have a platform or a voice. They think that, we just want to dress up and be pretty women, which, don't get me wrong, of course dressing up is super fun. Don't get me wrong, we love to dress up, but that's not the only reason.
Yeah.
This allows us to have that voice and to open these doors. And for me, it's open doors of networking. It's open doors of movies. It's open doors to connect from people across the world. Literally, when I say across the world, when I competed at Mrs. World, which has 80 countries involved, there were 40, I want to say 48, but don't quote me on that. I might be wrong on the number. But I'm going to say around 48 representatives at my class, which means the 2020 class, which we just competed in December. I got to meet people from across the world: Kenya, Haiti, Denmark, Switzerland, Poland, Russia, Italy. I got to meet phenomenal, empowering women who are out there doing amazing things. And these people aren't just pageant girls. They're wives.
Right.
They're single, some not in my category, but they're mothers. I don't want to say single mothers, because in my category, they're all married. So in my division, the Mrs., which is MRS, you have to be legally married.
Okay.
But they're out there, they're mothers, they're stay-at-home moms, they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're neurosurgeons. Like, these women are some phenomenal women who are out here doing amazing things. And we all are different. And that's the beauty of it. It amazes me when I step on that stage. I'm in awe. I'm like, sometimes I pinch myself. I'm like, am I dreaming? Am I really here? And then I'm like, in the back of my head, I'm like, hell yeah, I'm here. This is awesome. This is amazing. Look at these amazing women. Oh my God, look at these amazing women. Oh my God, like, I'm here with these amazing women. That's what goes through my head sometimes.
All right.
And it's brought me to podcasts like yourself and connecting again with just people from all different walks of life, all different races, all different religions. And it's I can't even begin to tell you what it's truly done for me, because that's just the tip of the iceberg.
All right. So we communicated a little bit, and you beforehand you mentioned that you were an advocate for mental health rights. Why is that important to you?
Absolutely. So I do advocate for mental health rights, and I also, do say awareness, but my son is diagnosed with social pragmatic disorder. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a neurological disorder in the brain that disassociates sometimes what and how to act appropriately in social situations, or when you're influenced by a social situation. It is just outside the autism spectrum. So how I like to explain it is, if the red light is autism, the yellow light is high functioning autism or Asperger's disease, the green light is social pragmatic disorder. They're literally that far away from each other. Right. And I don't want to use it as in like the red light is bad or stop. It just means, and to give you an example of what it means, it's just outside the family of autism. So there's a lot of autistic-like similarities, like tics and triggers and environmental triggers and behaviors. And my son was diagnosed with that and oppositional defiant disorder, which is simply stated, he challenges authority, or has a challenge with authority figures, and is defiant in those types of situations. Not all the time, but in some. And he's been diagnosed with this disorder since he was 5 years old. And going through what I went through with depression, anxiety, again, that feeling like you're not worth something, there was a point in my life when I literally thought that my life was going to be taken away from me by this abuser, but that I wanted to take my own life because, again, I didn't think I was fit. And I was going through almost what would be considerable to postpartum depression at the time. But there's just a lot of emotions coming over me. And so between those two things, I realized that I needed to advocate for his right, his right to education, his right to an experienced classroom, the right for him to not have to be afraid because sometimes he doesn't know how to act. I have to teach my son that the first thing he has to say if he's in trouble is, I'm autistic, because people don't know what social pragmatic disorder is. And so when he says I'm autistic, people react differently. They stop because there is more training out. now for how to handle autistic children and autistic behavior and disorders. But this way, you know, they don't charge him. They don't trigger him even more, because when he feels like he's in danger, he'll react. And when he was in third grade, he was heavily influenced by a child, and they were gonna expel him from school because this child talked my son into participating in. The child made the threat to a teacher, and he asked my son if he would block the teacher in while he threatened this teacher. And my son didn't know what he was doing. He just thought he was talking to the teacher. And they were going to expel him for this incident. And I'm not going to go into all the details of the incident because there was more that happened. But they were going to expel my son forever from the school. And he had to be placed on a 45-day placement, which is basically they send him to another school for 45 days. And then they had to have a hearing for him to come back to school. And that's really what started me advocating for his right, because where they sent him was basically a juvenile detention classroom. And I say that not to be disrespectful, but to be educated. This facility was filled with kids that were much older than him. My son was the youngest child at this facility. These children had histories of violent and serious behavioral issues. And I just personally did not feel that this was the best fit for my child. And also, this facility was severely understaffed. I mean, they were phenomenal. The staff that was there was phenomenal. And again, the original compliance was that he would go there for 45 days and that he would be allowed to come back to school. Well, once that 45 days was up, the principal didn't want to let him come back. He claimed that he was afraid of my son. I don't know afraid of what, because again, my son was in third grade. He might have weighed 50 pounds at the time. And again, while I understand the concern, there also needs to be addressed the issue of education.
Right.
In this year, my son did not learn a single lesson that he was at this facility. The education was constantly interrupted by other behavior, and they were not able to handle it completely all the time. They were not able to complete a single unit of education during the stay at this facility. So my child, who's in third grade, lost a half of a school year worth of education, which third grade is a fundamental grade. I don't know if everybody understands, but that's when you learn how to write in cursive typically.
Right.
That's when you're learning your fundamental math multiplication facts, you already learned addition facts, but now you're starting to learn like problem solving with additional facts. You're starting to learn like wording with math facts. You're starting to learn reading composition, writing composition more really in depth at that age. He missed all of that. And so we've been playing catch up for now he's back on his normal track, but we had to play catch up, and that should not be right. That should not be okay for any child. Right. And, there needs to be something done. Something needs to change for when this happens. And even the children who were there deserve a better education. They deserve to have a class that they can complete, and they deserve services that are fit for them. And so I've really gotten more involved with that, because seeing what these other kids went through and hearing their stories really started to make me think about my own child, and how can I shape his future for the better.
Right. Yeah. Just to kind of tie in you talked about diet and also too misplacing these kids and putting them in these classrooms or these basically juvenile detention style schools. My youngest daughter, her teacher, a couple of years back, her teacher did the in-house visit. She was a new teacher, so she came by the house and sat down and everything. And one of the things she did was she wanted to interact with the kids in their homes a little bit. I don't know how many people welcomed her in, but we didn't have a problem with it. But she said that sometimes it's something simple as we put these kids in these classrooms or we label them, but sometimes they may not have had a good meal, and you won't know that if you don't get to know the kids. So it seems like in your case, like there's like this rush to not deal with the problem or not do the hard work, not dig in and do the hard work and see what actually is going on, as opposed to just saying, all right, well, there's a problem kid, I'm just going to wash my hands with them. And I don't know if they're accounting for the fact that once you get certain kids and once you get kids in certain environments, you can lose those kids, for good in some of these environments. Something could happen to your son or one of those other kids in that school that would have changed the trajectory of their life forever. You may not have been able to, 45 days is a long time. You may not have
And
been
it ended up being longer.
right.
So it ended up being until the end of the school year. And again, I had to fight. It started very slowly where they would let my son come in one day a week for a half of a day, and eventually progressed to the end of the year where he was going the very last week of school. He was back in school for the entire week.
Right.
But we were building up for months prior to that to get him to be back in school.
Yeah. And was it when he did get back in school, or was there any noticing any kind of behavioral differences going to that school, like when he first left the initial school and went to that, what do you call it? What do they call it? Like alternative school or something like that?
Yeah.
So when he first went there, how was he, as far as, him, what could you see in him as far as development?
You hit it on the head. So my son is a lot triggered by food. If he eats like, I'm going to just say a grown man, he's always hungry. I feel like I've had him tested, but I feel like he has a tapeworm living with him that we just can't find. He will eat me under the sun. And so I do feed my child. I want to make that very clear. I have a whole pantry full of food, but I feel like I ended up having to implement that he could take snacks to school, long story short. But when he went to the facility, we were having challenges. But in the facility, his behaviors got worse because he was trying to fit in. And he even admitted that. He's like, Mom, I had to do these things because I was getting made fun of. I was getting bullied. They were threatening me. And I felt like if I did this, that they would just leave me alone.
Right.
And when you hear that from a child, like you mentioned, you start to fight. You start to figure out what is the root of this problem, what is the cause of this problem, and what potential solutions are there for me and my child. And it was a lot. And when he went back to his school, it's hard to say because when he first went back, like I said, there was only a week of school left. So the last week of school is like easy breezy lemon squeezy. There's not much work. There really is not a ton of, I don't want to say ton of structure, but it's more like, okay, like we're kind of winding it down, just kind of reiterating things. So I didn't really see any behavior when he came back from the placement, but in the placement, it definitely got worse before it got better. And then I was very, again, lucky because that summer, the principal who was the principal at the time, relinquished his position and they hired a new principal who has just been phenomenal in the past 2 years. Yeah, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. So the past 3 years, I should say, and really working with my son and not being afraid of him and, just taking him under her wing and finding solutions to the problem.
Right.
And I think that was the piece that was missing, is that I didn't feel like I had a principal at the time that was working to help find solutions. I felt like they were washing him off, that they were pushing him off because they didn't know how to deal with him. And that's okay. And I don't want to say that I'm okay with that, because I'm not, but I understand where he was coming from, because I didn't know how to deal with his behavior, but I had to learn and reach out again to ask questions and reach out to my community and reach out to my network. And I put in the work to learn even more about what to do and how to try to be the best parent I could be. I don't know if he ever did that, this particular principal, but I just don't feel like he did.
Right. All right. So the heart health awareness, mental health rights, haircuts and clothing, dress for success. The haircuts for the veterans, local shelters. I mean, what else is there, Sandahl?
I love that you said that, because when you list it, it's like a smorgasbord. I always tell people, I kind of giggle a little bit because it is a little bit of everywhere. And like, if you're listening to this and you're like, wow, this girl doesn't know what she wants to do, it's kind of intentional. I say, like, I'm a jacket of all trades, master of none. So as I mentioned, I'm an educator for haircutting. So I actually teach. I'm a teacher by trade. I mentioned, I'm always out in the community. I'm a pageant queen. I'm a wife. I'm a mother. And I'm working on my own nonprofit. And now, we talked about this a little bit earlier before the call started. I'm working on a platform, so to speak. And the reason why I call platform, because I don't know what it's going to be yet. But I learned throughout the years that I am more than just my experiences, and my experiences don't define me. However, I'm realizing that stories like mine, stories like yours, stories like these people who have maybe a personal story and a true solution of what small things, one thing that we could do to change, can really make an impact. And it's really been hitting my core for over a year now. And so I'm working on something called Emerge, and it stands for Education Through Meaningful Experiences, Realizing Goals Evolve. And basically what it is going to encompass is real life people either teaching something, preferably, whether it's via a webinar, podcast, I'm not quite sure yet, blog, that people can do, that they're a champion in their field for. So something that they're really good at. And this way, it can be a free platform of education for anyone who clicks on the link, and I want to be able to broadcast it again in various forms. So I don't know exactly how I'm going to do that yet, and whether or not right now I can add that in, but I'm just reaching out to tell people that you can emerge from your experiences and that you can do these things just like you and I are doing on this call today. And telling people that your past does not define you. Your size does not define you. Your height does not define you. Where you come from does not define you. Only you can do that. To quote my favorite musical artist of all times, Michael Jackson said, "If you want to make a difference, take a look in the mirror and make a change." It starts with you. It starts with really looking at yourself and realizing that you already have something within you that can make a change for the rest of someone's life. What is that? And do you want to do that? Because I really believe that If you set your mind to it, you can do it. And that's just pretty much it.
I mean, you can't end on a better note than that. Could you repeat the emerge again? What it stands
So
for?
emerge stands for education through meaningful experiences, realizing goals evolve.
All right.
And it's an acronym. So we know the definition for emerge is to basically come with through. But again, it just reminds you that no matter where you come from, what life you lived, you have an experience in your life that if you are strong enough to talk about or strong enough to teach somebody about, you can make a change in someone's life. You could change that life, like you mentioned, for the rest of their lives on a positive note. And that's what my goal with that platform is.
All right. So how do people get in touch with you if they want to follow, or are you on social media and all those things?
Of course, I'm on social media.
That was it. Basketball and all. That was alley oop. I was just throwing it at the rim, and you just gonna dunk
Oh
it
no,
home.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. So of course you can reach out to me. So you can find me on all social media at Sandahl Taylor, and I'm going to spell that for you because I know my name is very weird. So it's SANDAHL Taylor, TAYLOR. If you Google Mrs. Pennsylvania America 2018, you could find me. If you Google Mrs. Germany World 2020, you could probably find me. If you Google Sandahl Taylor, you can find me. So even if you can't spell it, you can find me. I'm on all social media. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Instagram and Facebook more often, but I check my Twitter every once in a while. So I got to get better at that. But please reach out to me if you have questions. If you are having trouble finding resources in your area, I'll definitely search it out. I can reach out to my network and help. If you want to become, part of my journey or figure out who you can help in your area, I'm all for that. I love it. Send me some love. Find me. I'm here.
I mean, what else can I say? Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, thank you so much for just giving me a platform to share my story and share my voice. I'm so happy I connected with you.